This month is Alzheimer's Awareness Month, and according to the Alzheimer's Association, nearly 7 million Americans are living with the disease that impacts memory. Here to tell us how we can help our loved ones battling the disease, we're talking with the owner of Senior Helpers Central Houston, Chelsea Wilson. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm glad that you did come in. Talk to us a little bit about what Alzheimer's looks like. I mean, obviously we realize that it affects your memory, but what are some other things that maybe people need help with?
Absolutely. So a lot of the things that people need help with that most people don't realize, they think about just the memory part that you're mentioning, is really, sometimes they need help with bathing. They don't really quite remember exactly how to complete some of the tasks of daily living. Sometimes bathing, dressing, grooming, eating, things like that. And even something as simple as getting groceries. Yeah.
So they forget to do things like that, and then we don't really remember that that is also part of their memory.
Absolutely.
What are some of the symptoms, like maybe some of the onset symptoms that we would recognize in somebody?
Sure. So some of the onset symptoms are going to be things like, misplacing things, constantly feeling like, hey, somebody came in and took my remote, some things that don't quite seem like they make sense. So you'll have the memory lapses and repeating themselves and really reverting back to their childhood memories. That's a very common thing when they kind of go back into that long-term memory phase where they're really stuck in that childhood.
Because that part of the brain is affected after the more like short-term memory parts of your brain are affected.
Absolutely, and music, actually, funny enough, is one that stays intact for quite some time.
Which is great with the holidays coming up. It's always great to bring up the music and traditions because they tend to remember that for longer into the disease process. How do senior helpers help, though? What's your business? What do you guys do?
So that's a great question. So we have private caregivers that actually go in and help people with some of those things that they're forgetting to do. And then one of the big things is really helping to prevent and decrease the rate at which some of these things progress. So that involves playing things like brain games, decreasing social isolation. That's one of the things that's really, really taking a toll on our seniors right now.
So we can reach out to you early in the disease and help to maybe prolong it a little bit, prolong their memory a little bit?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's one of the things that our senior helpers caregivers are very trained with, is helping to prevent and helping to love them in the phase of life that they're in, and even help to connect the family and restore that family dynamic again.
Okay, sounds kind of expensive. How can people afford your services?
That's a great question. So of course you can pay for it out of pocket, but there is a new guide model with the federal program that involves Medicare, and so that actually provides respite care, which for the clients, it helps with their families for the fatigue and burnout. That's what respite is. And so this is a big deal because Medicare up until this point hasn't started providing any funding in relation to these types of services.
Can people reach out to you and consult you about what they can afford and what they can't afford?
Absolutely, absolutely. We're always willing to have that conversation, talk about what it can look like, and even veterans too. Veterans and family members of veterans, they have access to a lot of benefits that most people don't realize, and that's one of the things that we hold their hand to help them get qualified for.
Because I'm sure a lot of people listening would love your services, maybe are a little more curious about them after this segment, so hopefully you can help them out.
Absolutely, they can reach out to us on our website at seniorhelpers.com or even Google Senior Helpers of Central Houston and it'll take them right to us.
Senior Helpers of Central Houston, Chelsea Wilson, thanks so much for coming into the studio. That was really good information.
Thanks for having me.